Welcome to the Shadow of the Script podcast. This is your host, Jared May, and this is kind of the college football edition. Like I said the previous week, we did a little NFL preseason analysis. That has wrapped up. It is now time for one of the best times of the year for many people, the college football season. Now, we already had week 0, technically, in Dublin, Ireland, between Iowa State and Kansas State. Fun game. Kind of was a little muddy at the beginning due to the rain, no pun intended, but very exciting to have that back in the atmosphere, and then now moving into what seems to be a really fun first week of college football with some primetime matchups, which I'll get into here in a little bit. You know, I kind of teased my top 25 consensus board from the STS network. I will be presenting that today in its glorious fashion. And I'm sure, you know, there will be some portions of it that you guys disagree with. And hell, I've had a lot of second thoughts on a couple of them. Especially after watching the Iowa State and Kansas State game, I'll probably make a little tweak in there, just because I guess I'm afforded that opportunity. But I do want to get in the habit. So we're starting to get into the season, and we're trying to figure out the best way to do this platform in terms of equally distributing NFL and college football. We are a NFL and college football podcast. We don't really cover any other sports. I don't have any desire to. But in terms of how this year is going to look, I think it's going to be, you know, one 30-minute NFL episode and one 30-minute college football episode. And then maybe incorporate some guests in those college football episodes to kind of tackle some fun subjects. But that way it's not bite-sized, but it's more like, all right, if I want to watch a college football episode, we can click on that one. If I want to watch the NFL one, click on that one. So that'll be fun, and we'll still keep the STS segments together, and the clips will be rolling out each week. So without further ado, I do want to get started. Let's get started with a bang. I want to go through this weekend's matchups. And obviously, you know, there's the Battle of the Death Valley. There is Texas versus Ohio State. You know, that is clashing off the college football season at 11 a.m. This weekend. There is Alabama, Florida State. And then there's Notre Dame versus Miami on Sunday. So I want to get into those kind of predictions, just kind of start off with a bang. Let's start with Alabama and Florida State. Actually, you know what? We're audible. Alert. We're going to start with Texas and Ohio State because that is the earliest game, and I'll just kind of go down by time increments. 11 a.m. Now, this is going to be quite the, I would say, foreshadowing matchup of the year. Texas is now going into their second year in the SEC under center with Arch Manning. Quinn Ewers has entered the NFL. It is now finally Arch Manning's time to show what he's capable of and put all that talk into action and walk the walk instead of talking the talk. And granted, I'm not calling Arch Manning out for saying anything unwarranted, or he's been extremely humble in this process, and I've praised him in a lot of different aspects of waiting, of NIL opportunities, of you name it. But this is quite the damn matchup to have us college football fans be introduced to the full-scale capabilities of Arch Manning. And then on the flip side of things, you know, Ohio State, defending national champions, you know, hosting Texas is a very intimidating atmosphere as well. And I had a buddy, a really close friend of mine, you know, talk about, he is a Texas fan. I always mess with him like, who are you talking about? Like, he didn't even go to Texas, but I always mess with people like that. It's fun to gaslight. Talking about, all right, well, if Texas wins this game, which he does not think that they will, then call it in the air, you know, call it now ahead of time that Texas will win the national championship. And I think that might sound completely nonsensical to the naked eye. But when you really get to thinking about it and you look in terms of the Texas Longhorns schedule, you look at what they did last year, you look at what Sarkisian has systematically grown through the NIL process and through recruiting and just kind of continuously building upon that depth that is so much needed in the SEC and to be a national championship contender. And I don't see anybody saying that that's not happening over there at Texas, because it's not. Their talent over there, it's going to be very, very, very strong. It's going to be, in my opinion, I think when you're looking at a team like Texas versus last year's Texas team, there was a lot of draft picks that came out of there. Matthew Golden, Jaden Blue, Quinn Ewers, Gunnar Helm, some defensive guys on the ball. But, this year, it's always a new team. But it's a similar schedule. We're just going to be flipping maybe some non-conference games and some home and away opportunities. So with the schedule that they had last year and kind of plug and playing it to the one upcoming, I think Texas to my buddy's point, will have a very, very good chance to be one of the teams in the conference that is 10-2. Whether they drop a game to Ohio State or drop a game at the end of the year to A&M or drop a game somewhere in between and let a sleeper game bite them in the butt. I think widespread across the SEC, there will not be an undefeated team that is out there. If you go undefeated this year in the SEC, then I think that you ought to win the national championship, and it would be one of the greatest historical seasons of all time. But I really don't think logistically that's going to happen. But if Texas were to beat Ohio State in Columbus, Ohio, then we can start having some conversations about, well, holy shit, we got a real contender on our hands. We've got an SEC team that has already made one statement before conference play has even began. And so that'll be intriguing. And obviously, there's very, very high anticipation for Texas just as a team in general. They're consensusly ranked in the top 5 of every single relevant consensus board that I like to reference from, and you'll see that later in this episode. Ohio State, on the other hand, with Ryan Day and a new quarterback coming into the fold, and Jeremiah Smith, and losing Tre'Davion Henderson and Quinshawn Judkins to the draft, there are more questions, I would argue, with Ohio State than there are with Texas. But that still doesn't mean that Ohio State's going to be that domineering team that like they have been over the past decade. And thus being at home, and with Matt Patricia coming in as defensive coordinator, that could kind of jolt the defensive scheme quite a bit. Ryan Day, he's had his criticisms, but he finally got it done last year. So there might be less of a chip on their shoulders this year, and you could see some games slip. But in terms of playing Texas week 1, my official prediction is I think Ohio State wins this game. I think Ohio State wins it very, very timidly. And I say win this game, I would say by 3 to 5 points. That might sound cliche, but like I've said, I've had a lot of discussions with Texas fans that are realistic about the team and kind of know the ins and outs of the team, and I like to get people's perspectives on it. I'm sure I'll have him or somebody else kind of come on later in the season and discuss that in more depth. But I think Texas, they might lose this game, but in terms of the rest of the season, I just think they'll continue to climb and climb and climb in terms of the rankings and be one of those 9-2 SEC teams with one out-of-conference loss. So however you regard that, whether that be, they can't beat real teams, or it's a tough schedule, or they played Ohio State away, I don't think it's going to be – only going to be a big deal because Texas loses. And that's if Texas loses, obviously. But it's only going to be that big of a deal because it's Arch Manning and they lost. Now, if this were another team, be like, man, that was a great matchup. It's kind of like the Cowboys. A lot of PR, a lot of televised opportunities go Texas Longhorns' way. And so when you're put on the big screen against a Big Ten opponent, and you drop that game opening week, opening kickoff, essentially, big noon kickoff, that's a big deal. That's like the Cowboys losing Thursday Night Football versus the Eagles this upcoming September. So we'll see what happens there, but that is I would say, arguably the most anticipated matchup of the weekend, and a damn good way to get it started off. I mean, alternatively, another SEC matchup here. Alabama is going over to Florida State to play at in the 2:30 window. And I think, obviously, Florida State struggled big time last year. After losing Jordan Travis, it just hasn't really been the same. A lot of recruitment issues. And frankly, after losing Jimbo Fisher, it really hasn't been the same, ironically. But Kalen DeBoer, second-year head coach for Alabama, had some highs and some lows last year with Jalen Milroe at quarterback. Ryan Williams is returning to the fold at wide receiver. I truly believe that Alabama runs Florida State out of the stadium. And a lot of those college athletes will be hitting the bars afterwards and playing in the snow, if you get me. But I think Florida State is not going to be, if anything, not going to be ready to face Alabama week 1. You'll hear the rest of this list and call it bias, SEC biased. But I really do believe that Ty Simmons, is it Ty? Hold on. Give it a moment. I think I have his name wrong. Yeah, Ty Simpson, not Simmons. Sorry, Ty Simpson was announced the Alabama starting quarterback. Now, I kind of jokingly talked about Ty Simpson when he was announced the Alabama starting quarterback. And truth be told, I thought it was actually a pretty relevant tweet. If I could find the damn thing. But kind of talking about white Alabama quarterbacks since the year 2009. And here it is, right on cue. And this is, obviously it's sarcasm, but I also think it's kind of relevant. I mean, the white quarterback movement in Alabama has good historical little trinkets in there. I mean, so those consist of Greg McElroy, AJ McCarron, Coker, and Mac Jones, and now Ty Simpson. But the touchdown interception ratio between all those quarterbacks since 2009 is 160 touchdowns to 32 interceptions. That's a 5-to-1 ratio. The regular season record is 64-7. The playoff record is 10-1. The national championships are 5 national championships between these quarterbacks. None have won Heisman's. But that tells me Ty Simpson is going to cook this year for Alabama. And I think he starts off hot versus Florida State and runs them out of the stadium. And really going into the next SEC matchup, ACC versus SEC matchup, LSU is going into quote-unquote Death Valley for Clemson. Now, currently, LSU is ranked number 9. Clemson is ranked number 4. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that Clemson and LSU played the previous year to open up the season, and Clemson took that game as well. LSU has not won a season opener in, I think, 4 years. And don't get me wrong, I really like Garrett Nussmeier. There's been some fluctuations with how I feel about Brian Kelly. I've never really enjoyed Brian Kelly as a coach, but Brian Kelly versus Dabo Swinney, name, image, and likeness of God. They're both cornballs. Easily. Like, they're both very, super cornball head coaches. But they got a good team. I mean, Cade Klubnik with Clemson versus Garrett Nussmeier with LSU. And I think LSU breaks that streak. However, I think Clemson has a better season than LSU. I think LSU breaks the streak of season openers lost. You'll see it later in the consensus board that I have, but I think Clemson is going to be a phenomenal team. I think they finish top 5. I think LSU finishes top 10. And again, to reiterate, this is a phenomenal way to open up the college football season with a night game in Death Valley for the fight for Death Valley. Brian Kelly, Dabo Swinney, Garrett Nussmeier, Cade Klubnik. Who's the real Death Valley? I think it'll be LSU that night. As much as I don't like Brian Kelly, and as much as I favor Cade Klubnik, I think LSU takes that game. Now, moving on to Sunday. This is kind of your Catholics versus convicts game. This is Notre Dame, ranked number 6 currently, versus number 10, Miami, Florida. So Carson Beck, now the quarterback in Miami, Florida. The Notre Dame Fighting Irish, they've got my guy Julian Love, the running back over there. I can't remember who the quarterback is off the top of my head. I'll figure it out here in just a second. But between these two teams, Notre Dame with Marcus Freeman, very players coach oriented, I guess more defensive minded and leaning on the defensive side of the ball. Recruitment is never going to be an issue with Notre Dame. In terms of Miami, Florida, this is another. I always compare them with the guys over there in Tennessee. Tennessee is always ranked much higher than they should be in the consensus boards, and then all of a sudden nothing happens. Miami shocked the world last year and did a lot of the things that needed to do, especially with Cam Ward, in terms of winning football games. Now, how they won those football games was the primary issue last year. And who they lost to was an even bigger issue. And we look at that and go, well, who's the stronger kind of play-in team to get that 10th, 11th, or 12th college football playoff spot? The playoff committee decided that Miami was not that. And I can agree with that terminology because of how they lost their football games, because of who they lost to. Let's see who the Notre Dame quarterback is. Now, in terms of, I think, overall head-to-head matchup versus in this Notre Dame versus Miami, Florida game, I think Notre Dame is out the gate stronger than Miami, Florida. I think Miami, Florida is a big branded team, but I don't know if they're a real team. And that's the same question we've had every single season with Miami, Florida. But I know that Notre Dame is going to be at least somewhat of a contender. I don't know that about Miami, Florida. However, Miami, Florida, as I'm looking at this right now, has a much more established quarterback than Notre Dame does. Notre Dame has decided to go with redshirt freshman C.J. Carr as the starting quarterback for the 2025 season. He's the grandson of former Michigan coach Lloyd Carr, beat out sophomore Kenny Minchey in a competitive battle during spring and summer practice. He will make his first career start against Miami, Florida. He's a former 4-star recruit, number 6 quarterback in 2024, appeared in one game in 2024 at Purdue without recording stats due to a prior elbow injury, but was fully healthy for spring practice. His pocket passing ability edged out Minchey's dual threat style per Freeman and offensive coordinator Mike Denbrock. So, you look at it that way, you're going to get more of a pocket passer. This should be an interesting matchup. Carson Beck decides to be mobile occasionally, but I think Notre Dame in this game is going to take it by at least 7 to 10 points. But Miami will look pretty decent. But I think Notre Dame is a more complete team, a complete unit, a better coached unit. I think Notre Dame goes in there and kind of rides behind the coattails of Julian Love, who is a phenomenal running back prospect going into this upcoming draft next year. But in terms of how this first season or first week of college football is going to go, man, I mean, I can't be more excited. These are 4 incredible matchups. The rest, sit back, plant your ass in that couch, and just enjoy a Saturday of football being back. And I'm super excited to react to it. I'm super excited to see how my predictions come into fruition. Maybe I get them all wrong. Who knows? Don't care. At least I get to watch college football. But, a lot of thought process goes into making a prediction, but then also having a top 25 consensus board. So after making those predictions and not collaboratively thinking about how my predictions may affect the predictions I just made, we'll see how that goes. But yeah, let's see what we got here. Let's pull it up, and we'll go from there. All right. And one of the things I love, and I just mean love, about technology is you can share your screen, obviously. If I had a digital creator, and I'll just be upfront and honest with you guys, if I did have a digital creator and somebody that could actually make graphics for me, I'd do it. But here, not to going to sugarcoat it for you, here's what I truly believe. If you can see it and you think what I'm saying is worth a crap, then what's the difference? So let's go into this. All right. So Josh Pate, love this guy. Really think he is a phenomenal analyst for the college football atmosphere, as well as Joe Klatt. And I've mentioned them almost every podcast I've talked about college football, and I'd almost love to collaborate with them and just kind of learn from them and pick their brain about different aspects of college football. Because obviously that's their full-time job. This is not my full-time job. So I kind of put their consensus board rankings underneath each team. So, for example, starting off hot with number 1, the Georgia Bulldogs. I think they're going to be the best team in college football this year. I think they're the best coach with Kirby Smart. I think people are kind of ignoring and letting them fly under the radar and put them in between, ranks 3 and 7, which is still pretty dang good. But I think they're going to be the most consistent. I think they're going to be the most dangerous, and they're going to be the most prominent SEC football team this season. Now, it did not look that way last year with was it Gunnar Stockton coming in to kind of be the emergency quarterback for the playoff run that they were going in. I think that's a little unfair to criticize Georgia, but Josh Pate has them ranked 3rd on his board, and Joe Klatt has them ranked 7th on their board. Other AP polls have them at 5. And likely in the top 5 in other 2025 coaches polls. At number 2, I like Penn State. Penn State with Drew Allar. I think Drew Allar takes another step forward compared to last year. And I understand people think that Penn State and teams like Penn State in that geographical area are soft and they're not going to play as hard as the SEC, and they don't play as hard as them Southern boys down here. When we got them briskets cooked up, but Penn State is an extremely deep college football team, year in, year out. Where I have them ranked number 2, I think it's because in terms of their strength of schedule, in terms of the schedule that Ohio State is having to face, or Michigan is kind of on the uprising with Bryce Underwood, there's a lot of question marks there, and some other Big Ten teams. There's just not enough to go off of to say, will those teams be more consistent than an established Drew Allard-led offense in Penn State? I don't believe so. There are already questions with Ohio State. Starting a new quarterback, losing the running back committee that they had last year, which obviously they're probably going to regain more recruits. But there's less questions to me in Penn State than there are in other Big Ten schools, which is why I have them at number 2. Now, will they be the best team heading into the playoffs out of the Big Ten? No, I think Ohio State could easily go in there and rock their world, or some team can upset Penn State. I'm not saying they're going to win the national championship, but I think they're going to be the most consistent team in terms of their schedule and in comparison to Ohio State and Michigan. Alabama ranked number 3rd. I talked about Ty Simpson. Ty Simpson coming in, white quarterbacks galore, white boys summer, whatever you want to call it. I think this is going to be a very intriguing Alabama Crimson Tide team. This is Kalen DeBoer's 2nd year coaching the unit. Josh Pate has him 5. Joel Klatt has him 9. I think both of those are obviously completely fair, and I'm going against the grain and ranking them a bit higher than the experts I consider in this consensus board. But I'm a believer in coaches. I'm a believer in talent, and I'm a believer in white quarterbacks. Kidding. And then this is the one I think that'll shock everybody. Texas, a lot of times, look, Josh Pate has them at 1, Joe Klatt has them at 2. I have them at 4. And that's kind of because I have them losing to Ohio State. And this is kind of where I said that my predictions might come back to bite me, as Ohio State is kind of further back in the list. but I think that's how their schedule continues to play out and how Texas begins to climb the ladder as the season goes on, as the SEC schedule kind of bites the dust, essentially. But I think Texas grows over time, and I think questions become more concerning for Ohio State as the season continues to go on. Like I talked about Arch Manning, this is technically his third year in Steve Sarkisian's system. So it should be an easy plug and play. Let's go play some football. Let's throw some darts and go from there. But I think, Joe Klatt has some O-line concerns with the Texas unit. That's something to keep an eye on. Something I wasn't aware of. We'll see how that goes. Number 5 is Clemson. And I have Clemson taking an L to LSU off the rip. And I think it's because LSU is probably going to take that Death Valley stuff pretty personally. And I think LSU is just going to break that curse. But in terms of Cade Klubnik, I think the way he produced last year, the way I believe he's going to produce this year, and I understand Phil Maffa has departed, but that's an easy replacement. Phil Maffa is not somebody that in the college atmosphere, he's a 6th-round draft pick or 7th-round draft pick from the Dallas Cowboys, but you can find other running backs in the ACC. I don't think that's going to be an issue, but that's my top 5. And then I'm right on the cusp of the top 5, and I've kind of discussed this in depth with Ohio State already, is new quarterback coming in, Ryan Day, defending national champs. I think there's going to be a little bit of a downside in their schedule to where they might drop a game or two, maybe lose to Michigan again this year in that final week of the season. But Jeremiah Smith is an absolute force to be reckoned with, as everyone knows. He is going to be the most exciting and potential Heisman candidate this season. That does not mean they're going to finish top 5. And then kind of outside of that top 5, 6-ish arena, I've got Notre Dame, LSU, Oregon, and Texas A&M. Yes, I have Texas A&M in the top 10 at number 10. Josh Paint ranks him 13th. Joe Klatt ranks him 16th. Now, here's the thing with Texas A&M, and this might shake up just a little bit as we get closer to the season and as we see Notre Dame play versus Miami, Florida. But Texas A&M plays a non-conference game at Notre Dame this season. And with a redshirt, I believe, freshman, right? With a redshirt freshman in C.J. Carr at Notre Dame, there's a good chance that Marcel Reed, who I have very high hopes for, I have used the comparison of Jaden Daniels for Marcel Reed for about a year now, and I'm really not afraid to say it. I can see the potential for Marcel Reed to be a not necessarily a Heisman candidate, but somebody to really go, wow, he makes plays that not many other people do with their feet. He's not going to be tipping his passes this year. Texas A&M has one of the most powerful defenses in the SEC, in my opinion. And based on what I've seen and based on other analysis, I think they're flying under the radar. I don't think their schedule is the most tough schedule out of every SEC school. I think they beat Auburn. I think they beat Missouri. I think they beat Arkansas. You just kind of go down the ladder. And if they win that game versus Notre Dame before conference play starts, and they drop that last game versus Texas for the second year in a row, I think they're going to be walking into Texas at 9-2. And I love Lenore Sellers at South Carolina, but I do think they kind of have a drop off as well. Not a massive one, but some team that you expect way more out of, and it just kind of becomes like this. It's a question mark, in my opinion. I'm really intrigued to see what South Carolina does, but they stole a game from A&M last year. Auburn stole a game from A&M last year, and Texas stole a game from A&M last year, and Notre Dame. And I'm not even pledging to be the victim here, but I'm just saying if Texas A&M can just win the games they're supposed to win, if they're told that they're not supposed to win Notre Dame, and they lose that one, that's fine. If they're told they're not going to win versus Texas, that's fine. That's 2 losses. I believe they're going to be favored versus everyone else in their schedule, possibly not South Carolina. I guarantee you they're going to be predicted to win versus Missouri. in Arkansas. So when you look at it that way, I think Texas A&M has a really good shot to be a 9-3 football team and possibly 10-2, depending on the Notre Dame game. And then we'll get to the Texas versus Texas A&M game at a later date this fall. But that's your top 10 so far. Some highlights: A&M at 10, Texas at 4, Ohio State at number 6, Alabama and Georgia in the top 3, and Penn State at number 2. When you get outside of the top 10, this is when things start to get a little muddy. I do have South Carolina right behind Texas A&M, and I think that's because they have a great potential return to a 9-3 overall record. Lenoris Sellers is one of my favorite quarterbacks in college football and one of my favorite Heisman candidates. I guess if you're a betting guy, that's somebody to put a fun bet on, because Lenoris Sellers is going to be practically holding teams like South Carolina together. Dylan Stewart on defense is going to be pretty solid. I heard some rumblings of him last year. But Josh Pate makes a good point in seeing a lot of defensive losses as well. I think a couple of them went into the draft. Speaking of what was it? It was a Boston College guy. Disregard. But I love the coach at South Carolina. I love the quarterback. Miami, Florida. This is Carson Beck. I think this is more of a, in my opinion, this is more of a Miami runs through the ACC more than they are the 12th best team in the country. I do believe they're going to lose that first game versus Notre Dame. I think they're going to win the majority of their ACC schedule. I think they'll also be a 9-3, 10-3-ish team when the end of the season hits. Just because they're ranked 12 does not mean they're going to be a 12th, one of the 12th teams in the college football playoffs. Ole Miss at 13, Austin Simmons, quarterback, filled in last year for Jackson Dart twice. Really loved what I saw from him. Josh Pate has them right around the same at 14. Joe Klatt has them ranked outside the top 20. I think Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin are very much slept on. SMU, that's a big question mark. How big is that depth going to be? How are they going to compete in the ACC? What are they going to be able to do in that conference with a Clemson, with a Miami, Florida, with teams like that in any non-conference games? But one sleeper that I have in here is Oklahoma. Don Mateer out of Washington State, bringing over the offensive coordinator or head coach from Washington State, whichever one it was, and having a stronger defense than Oklahoma has really historically ever had. I think Oklahoma can sneak into the top 15, and that is saying something, because Oklahoma's schedule is by far a lot like Arkansas's schedule. It is an absolute travesty. It is an absolute war. Like, you go into that thing, they play all of their rivals. They play very top tier ranked SEC opponents, top tier ranked non-conference opponents. I mean, they're just going to be battling the whole year. But if John Mateer can get him inside the top 20 in his first year with Oklahoma Sooners, that might save Brent Venables' job. And, the addition of Jaden Ott, running back, and they released their official depth chart just the other day. And I believe Jaden Ott is a special teams guy. I'm not sure if he's starting. I think they got some other guys. They'll have some rotation in there. But I am really excited for what John Mateer is going to do in Oklahoma. And if he gets him to 8-4 or 9-3 or one of those, I think us as fans and as analysts and for the College Football Playoff Committee, we have to be more susceptible to a SEC team being 8-4 or 9-3. If a SEC team finishes 9-3, and like I mentioned, no SEC team has an undefeated schedule, then that's a damn good year. 9-3 is phenomenal. And with that schedule, I think strength of schedule would propel them maybe higher than 15. Here's where more questions begin to arise in terms of, I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so you can see 16 through 20. But DJ Lagway, obviously the upside with DJ Lagway is absolutely incredible. What is his name? Yeah, Billy Napier. This is, he was 8-5. Was he 8-5? I guess he won a bowl game. Shit. That is right. Wow. Yeah. Florida did go 8-5 last year and won a bowl game after getting 7-5. That is phenomenal compared to how they first started in how A&M played them. Texas has got to go into Florida and play the Gators. That could be a sleeper game that Florida steals. If Florida was 8-4 and finished 9-4, they can finish between that 15 and 20 ranked system. But Josh Pate has them in the top 10. That's fun. That's exciting. I don't think Florida is going to be that incredible, that impressive this year. I think DJ Lagway is going to be extraordinarily exciting, but I have them right outside both of their consensus rankings. I'm not going to overreact with Florida. I still am not a huge believer in Billy Napier. I know he kind of flipped things around and had a defensive leap, but I really think they're going to be right smack in the middle between 16 and 20. Kansas State, I want to flip-flop to Iowa State. I think Iowa State with Becht at quarterback, BEC. I was going to say BBC. BECHT. He played phenomenally in Dublin, Ireland, considering the weather conditions, and then the second half really kind of went to an explosive rate. I like what I saw from Iowa State, and I don't dislike Kansas State, but the Big 12 is pretty competitive, and it's kind of disregarded in terms of strength of schedule. So there's just a lot of shakeup there, and I don't want to have, because 20 through 25, I feel like I have a few either former Big 12 teams or Big 12 teams that are in there. Bryce Underwood with Michigan. Now, Joe Klatt has them ranked a bit too high, in my opinion. I really have to disagree with them being a top 10 team. I don't think Bryce Underwood is going to take them to the top 10 in a Big 10 schedule. I think Michigan is going to be an 8-4 team, a really good 8-4 team. And you're going to be like, wow, Bryce Underwood is as advertised, and the next year he's in there, he's going to really shock the world. They're going to be a favorite to be top 5, but I don't think it's this year. Just give it time. And plus, the new head coaching changes since Harbaugh left. We're still not sure what type of coach we have in Michigan. We know they like to beat Ohio State. That's great. But one game doesn't constitute the entire season. For them, it does. But as a consensus committee and as future college football commissioner, head ass, I don't think Michigan is going to be I don't think it's going to be a playoff team, but I think they're going to be very, very close, maybe a game or a touchdown away from being a 9-3 football team. Tennessee. Now, I can argue Tennessee can be unranked. And the losing Nico Amaliva, over the UCLA, and then obtaining UCLA's Jose Aguilar. They lost a lot of pieces on both sides of the football. But I am a believer in Josh Heupel. I think Heupel is a phenomenal head coach. I think he's done wonders for quarterbacks at that position historically at Tennessee. But we're kind of going back and forth here with Josh Pate having him at 18 and Joe Klatt having him unranked. I think both of them are a huge possibility, but having them just inside the top 20 is favorable. It's kind of like, this is a big brand. I trust the coach. Let's throw them in there as an 8-4 SEC team and say, wow, that's impressive, all things considered. Baylor, I'm going to be honest, I don't know shit about Baylor. I don't know what they're doing over there. I know correct me if I'm wrong if you're watching this, I think Baylor allows alcohol in their stadiums now. I think they do. They've always haven't done that. Maybe that's why their home field advantage is terrible. Baylor, Texas Tech, Nebraska, these are the Big 12 teams and former Big 12 teams that I thought were very intriguing heading into this year. And honestly, you could argue Nebraska has the potential as a Big 10 team to go higher in the rankings. I think what Matt Rule can do with Dylan Raiola in his second year, I mean, there's just a lot of upside there. I know Dylan Raiola is kind of a cornball, and he's like, yeah, I quit with the Mahomes comparisons. Like, bro, you're walking around like a wax figure of Mahomes. Let's just walk out to Skrilla, play some football, get a haircut, not like Mahomes, wear aviator glasses and maybe go clean shaven and play football, and we'll worry about the PR stuff later. But Matt Rule, I think he's going to be a pretty good college football coach. I think Nebraska, second year with Matt Rule, this is going to be an entertaining football team. This is going to be one of those teams where you're like, wow, they're another 8-4, 9-3 team in the Big Ten. That's pretty dang good. We should rank them. And then have the potential next year to have Dylan Raiola as a junior. I believe he's a sophomore now. I'm pretty sure he's a true freshman last year. As a junior, come in and go, now the sky's the limit. Now the expectations are for real. Now it's expectations are top 10, top 15. But again, a lot like Michigan, not yet. Not yet. And then Texas Tech, man, they have spent a lot of money with their oil. I think it was an oil and gas founder of some sorts that has just really gotten intimate with the NIL process, with the money-making process of Texas Tech, and bringing in recruits and upgrading everything in terms of recruiting to uniform changes. I think they're switching to Nike next year. There's a lot of changes going into Texas Tech, but they were super involved in the transfer portal. They were super involved in recruiting. They were super involved in NIL spending. I think Texas Tech has the potential to be a Big 12 conference winner. And yes, I think, like I said that, I think they have a potential to be the Big 12 winner this season. Iowa State and Texas Tech, I think, will be the two Big 12 leaders, in my opinion. And if Colorado kind of comes up through the ranks and Deion Sanders proves that he can win without his son, then that's great too. I'm no hater. USC at number 23, Indiana at 24, and Illinois at 25. And like I mentioned before, Iowa State should be in this list. Iowa State should be ranked. I'm sorry if you're an Iowa State fan and you're watching this and going, what the hell? I got you guys. You're in there. But Lincoln Riley, this is probably just a Lincoln Riley bias, and I don't even have that. But I think they can just squeeze their way into the ranking system at the end of the year and just, win a bowl game and go, okay, yeah, they're in the top 25. Lincoln Riley has a recovery year. It's like, well, no, it's nowhere near as what was expected of Lincoln Riley. Indiana, it's Kurt Cignetti's team. That's really the only reason why I want to put him in the top 25. And then at Illinois, it's just, it's Luke Altmaier. I really don't have much on Illinois. I don't think Illinois has much on Illinois either. But if they line up in 25, then, hey, I'm right. That's cool. Whatever. But it's just kind of a very fluctuating portion of the consensus board. But so key takeaways. Texas A&M at number 10. I think that's a hot take. I think that's a fun one too. And I am a realist of my team. My team is the Aggies. I understand people watching that going, oh, he's an Aggie fan. Of course he's going to rank him, top 10. I'm like, what? I like what Elko is doing at Texas A&M. I have not seen that with another coach. I have not seen the, fuck you ball attitude. I've seen that, we got a really cool facility. I'm Jimbo Fisher and I'm the highest paid coach and flashing my paycheck. What's up with it? It's like I've seen that, but I've seen get down to business Mike Elko too. And his first season last year with all the quarterback fluctuations, I thought it was a B+ season. I think, and I'm anticipating an A+ season from the Texas A&M Aggies. And they haven't had a 10-win season since Johnny Manziel or somewhere around there. I think they're going to get one this year, whether it be with the bowl game or in conference play. Another hot take was Oklahoma at 15, and then having Nebraska in the top 25, not having Texas at number 1 or 2, having Clemson in the top 5. I guess those are your big takeaways on my 2025 top 25 consensus board. So, yeah, and so what if I'm wrong? But yeah, okay. Watch some college football this weekend. Hang out with your bros. Grab some beers. Throw a Zen in. Do what you got to do. Plant your ass in those seats this weekend, or go play golf and have it on. I don't know. Do what you got to do. College football this weekend. We're back. We have waited so freaking long for this, and now it's finally back. And it's better than the NFL, and it's more exciting, and it's more intriguing, and there's more changes, and it's chaotic, and there's a lot of big names. People are starting to learn the sport. And with the power of me, Josh Pate, and Joe Klatt, we will guide you into one of the most entertaining atmospheres on the planet. We will see you Saturday. I will have my reactions and clips out this week. ready to go. And I am super excited for this season. So take it easy, y'all. Y'all have a good rest of your week.